everyone, and welcome to the November 19th episode of Trips and Traps. I'm Andy Serling, joined by Eric Donovan.
What's going on, Andy? Lots of races to get to, but first, before we get to some new material, let's go back to a horse we've already talked about a couple times.
Yeah, and we're going to have some traps this week more than trips, and Good and Acceptable is a horse that we talked about actually on last week's show, and surprisingly, the horse ran back just, I think, 8 days after its first start this past Saturday, and it's a good example. That's why we brought it up. Not that the horse lost, but when we talk about horses here, any horses, you're looking for, when you're looking for horses that you have trips on, you don't automatically want to bet them the next time they run. And it's a question of what kind of fields they're facing. You still have to handicap the races, and Good and Acceptable was placed really over his head. Yeah, Good and Acceptable in an unacceptable spot, if you will. A horse that is a New York bred that probably, would be best suited for New York bred 50,000 or, even in state bred maiden special weight coming down to the winter. I think Good and Acceptable, would probably be able to give a good account of himself in there. But he ended up in an open special weight against 2-year-olds where he ran against a horse that had run a couple times at Saratoga, Monks Creek, a horse from the Kira McLaughlin barn, so just way up against it first. Yeah, he wasn't. Race. He didn't run badly. He finished a relatively distant third, but he actually got to the lead and went at 21-4 first quarter and fought it out and held okay for third. So just an example of, we're giving horses here, but you have to see where they're running the next time they run. Anyway, we'll get on to this week, and we have a few races to show. We feel like a lot of these are more traps than trips. The first race we're going to show is from November 12th. It's a 6th race. And we're going to talk about a couple horses here, starting out with the 6, La Concerto. Yeah, I like the way La Concerto ran in this race. I think when push came to shove at the end of the race, you could consider her as having made 3 moves in here. She's already up as part of the pace in here with the number 7 horse Goal for the Queen. The 8 horse in the race, Satisfaction, is going to basically go by these other 2 horses in a very quick pace in here, and then it's going to be La Concerto chasing the pace again once that horse clears off. But we see the number 5 horse in here, Submerge, sitting an absolutely perfect trip in the 4th spot. Yeah, what's interesting about this race is it's a 40-to-1 shot, the 8 Satisfaction, that is really the one that has the absolute most effect in this race. Because I was interested in Gold for the Queen, who ended up finishing 3rd to 7, who might have cleared the lead. Certainly La Concerto would have had a much easier trip either sitting behind Gold for the Queen, but Satisfaction, showing that extreme speed, sort of screwed it up for the both of them. Yeah, absolutely. And you see here at the top of the stretch the perfect trip just continuing for the 5 Submerge, who's in the green cap, tipping 4 wide on the outside. And in between horses on the lead here are now coming away with, I guess, a narrow lead down on the inside is La Concerto. And just watch the way La Concerto runs here in the stretch. A horse that, obviously could be beaten here by 5 or 6 lengths. Still giving her all at the end of the race in here. I liked how she finished up after being part of that early pace in here. Yeah, there would be no question if they'd restage the race in a fairly run race, if Submerge and La Concerto met again, I would take La Concerto, and I think a lot of people would, but I agree with you. Submerge is a horse I'm looking to bet against in the future, and La Concerto is not going to be a big price, but this is a horse that gets a relatively fair spot, is going to win its next start. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'll be looking to bet against Submerge off that perfect trip and a non-winners of one allowance for State Breds. We'll move on to our next race in the first segment here. This is a maiden claiming race, also from Wednesday on the 12th. It was a 9th race, 2-year-old fillies, $25,000 claimer. We're taking a look at basically how a bad start can really affect the whole outcome of the race. Absolutely, and you can see there the 8 horse. Absolutely, this is Irish Mama with Cornelio Velasquez. Well, he almost sort of jumps out of the saddle when this horse gets left. And Irish Mama was one of the favorites near 5-2 second choice, actually. But it's not so much that we care about Irish Mama, because she's not a horse that I don't think either one of us is looking to bet on down the road. But she was the absolute speed in this race, and by her getting left in this race, it changes the complexion of the race. And the eventual winner, the number 2, Tomorrow's Roses, is already on the lead and going pretty easily. Now, it's possible that she would have sat second in Irish Mama in this race had Irish Mama broken and still won the race, but it does help her, and it probably hurts some horses behind her. Yeah, absolutely. They're going to go 47-1 for the half, so even though it's this is a 2-year-old state bred claiming race, maiden claiming race in here, still on the slow side for the fractions here. We're going to take a look at the number 4 horse now, Tough But Fair, who's going to get into a little bit of a jackpot here down inside, going to have to steady as they come past the 5/16 pole, turning for home. Tough But Fair runs a good third in here. Keep your eyes on her throughout the stretch in this spot in here, but certainly the 2 horse Tomorrow's Roses continues to get everything her own way. Yeah, she did, and Tough But Fair was a horse that somebody sent us an email about, and they were right that she had trouble. Now, I don't think she was winning this race. She did save ground. Now, she was probably cost a length or so by that trouble, and the race developed in a manner that wasn't as fair to her as it could have been, so she certainly ran better than it looks like on paper. I'm not sure she was going to be a winning effort. Now, some people thought the second finish, Just Another Story, could have won run, had the 8 gun out and made a faster pace. I understand why someone would make that argument. I don't happen to agree. I still think, all things considered, she really had absolutely no finish in this race.
Yeah, I mean, Tamara's Roses did have everything her own way, but still clearly won the race by over 3 lengths, and looks good coming under the wire there. Don't know that just another story would have beaten Tamara's Roses. As you said, even if Irish Mama breaks well in that race, perhaps Tamara's Roses is just sitting second or third, where she might still get a perfect trip anyway.
Yeah, no question about it. And we talk about race dynamics, and if it's not clear to you, race dynamics is basically how the race is run: fast pace, slow pace, help speed, hurt speed, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a situation where the race dynamics were completely altered by what happened to start, and that's something that happens a lot, and it's something that's really worth paying attention to, especially as we get to the inner track, is how are the races run, and how does it affect the horses that participated, and how do you deal with that as you go further down the road.
Very often there'll be races on the inner track where there's 2 or 3 speeds. One of them doesn't break well, the other one outfoots the other one for the lead, and you have a loose on the lead situation where you thought you had a horse or you thought you had a race where there might be a 3-way pace battle. So.
No question, I agree with you.
All right, we're going to take a look at our final race of the first segment here. This is a maiden special weight on November 14th. Race number 2. This is, again, for a 2-year-old filly, New York breds here. And we're taking a look at the 6-horse Big Bonnie, who's going to jump up at the start and really cost herself a good amount of chance in this race. Is going to get left far behind early.
Yeah, and this is the second time in 2 starts that Big Bonnie has done this, and it's kind of a problem that you're not supposed to be looking forward to betting on horses that blow the break in 2 of their starts. But it is interesting. She gets up for 3rd, but what's funny is a lot of people will say because she got left and got up for 3rd, she ran better than she did. Now, she did. I'm not going to argue with that. But I felt like the number 7 in this race, Flying Heat, who's on the outside in the yellowish and green silks, who gets beaten at the wire by Big Bonnie. I felt in some ways Flying Heat was the interesting horse going down the road.
It does make a little bit of a premature move here, I guess you could say, coming around the far turn with the 3-wide movement here. Certainly a first-time starter from the Leo O'Brien barn. You might expect better things to come out of down the road as opposed to the first start here. But toward the back of the pack, we do have Big Bonnie getting back on track in here. And you know what? Although Big Bonnie's broken slow twice in a row, this one was more, I think, of an accident than the first time. It seems just like she wasn't ready to go. She was kind of tossing her head a little bit. The gates opened, and she was out of there in last place. But going to make a good run here for 3rd to catch up with the number 7 horse Flying Heat to win the show battle here. 2 horses, I guess, worth keeping an eye on, if not for whether or not you like them so much, as to they will probably be factors in the next race.
Yeah, I can understand that. And the thing about this race is our special effort, who wins the race, obviously wins the front end. This was a wet track, and that track was probably kind of speed, though I thought it was a pretty fair track overall. But when you have a horse that wires the field from the inside, a horse chasing on the outside like Flying Heat, trying to make that premature move, that makes the horse probably ran better than it looks on paper. And obviously Big Bonnie ran well, all things considered. But I got to tell you something. It's coming from a barn, Big Bonnie, that is 0 for the year, and I don't know if I want to bet this horse at any kind of short price.
And it'll probably be overbet next time too, especially considering that the 2 starts the horse has had in the connections. You're going to take a short price on a horse that might not be that good.
Right. Been 2nd and 3rd in his 2 starts.
Yeah. Well, that does it for the first installment of Trips and Traps. We'll be right back with another installment signed back onto the YouTube site. Remember, you can catch up with us on the email at tripsandtraps@NaraInc.com. Andy and I always enjoy getting those emails. Stay tuned. We'll be back with the second half.